Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Lalit Gupta. Today, I'll be running you through this webinar, how to do effective audits for ISMS and BCMS. That's a short slide on my introduction. So you can see who is talking with you today. Just one slide about the company which I'm representing, Core, Continuity and Resilience. We are ISO 22301 certified management consulting company. We do consulting in the areas of business continuity management, crisis management, IT disaster recovery, green IT, risk management, and information security management. We are a pure play management consulting firm, and we do consult, train, assess, and certify in all of these domains, which we talked about in the above plot. So today's topic is effective audit techniques in ISMS and BCMS. I read this line somewhere: audit enhances capital market credibility. I just modified it for this webinar. Effective audit enhances the capital market credibility. If my audits are effective, I can proactively identify future risks for my firm, for my company, for my operations, and rectify them. If my audits are not effective, I may or may not be able to find out the future risks, so I may be at loss. So we'll see how to do effective audits for ISMS and BCMS in some subsequent slides. So let me introduce what is effective audit. The combined code restating earlier codes declares that one of the duties of the audit committee is to review and monitor the external auditors' independence and objectivity and the effectiveness of the whole audit process, taking into consideration relevant professional regulatory requirements. So this was elaborated upon in another guidance by Smiths, which requires the committees to assess the qualification, expertise, and resources, effectiveness and independence of the external auditors annually. The assessment should cover all aspects of audit service being provided by the audit firm and include obtaining a report on the audit firms on internal quality control procedures. Now, why do we think the audit committee of the firm which is being audited is made responsible to check the effectiveness of audit? The external agency, the external auditors, they come and do the best job as per their knowledge, their proficiency, their skills and experience. But was that audit effective or not in real sense, in real business sense, is something that can be decided only by the internal people. And who are the highest stakeholders for internal people? The auditors, the audit committee, the board of directors, the highest body which govern that organization. So that is made responsible to check the effectiveness of audit. Now, let us see some definitions. A clear understanding of audit effectiveness is a prerequisite of audit evaluation. Now, effectiveness can have many aspects related to both particular audit and the audit firm in general. People understand effectiveness in different terms. Effectiveness is to some extent in the eyes of the beholder. It means different things to different auditors and to audit committee chairs, and may also differ between companies over time. Now, you cannot have one yardstick for the effectiveness of all the audits. One need to look at the effectiveness, the effect of that audit on that particular firm or a company in that particular situation. Now let us see a bookish definition for effective audit. Effectiveness can be regarded as a composite of competence, procedural arrangements, quality control, and quality assurance. The procedural arrangements can be regarded as the tools used by firms and individuals to ensure that audits comply with technical standards. For example, legal requirements, regulatory requirements, auditing standards set by different practices and boards, and taking into account the supplementary material in these practices and boards. So if I place audit effectiveness in a graph of X and Y scale, and I put no to yes, was the audit effective on one scale, and no to yes, was there an underlying problem in the firm before or after the audit on another scale, I can have four different quadrants. One can be there is no direct evidence to demonstrate that the audit was not effective. So I cannot say if it was effective or not. Another can be if the problem is later uncovered. This is evidence in hindsight that the audit was not effective. Now, one situation is I did the audit, later on some problem arose, which I think could have been handled better if it would have been identified in the audit. That is one situation. Second situation is audit happened, there is no problem happening, so I do not know if the audit was effective or not. Third situation can be no direct evidence to demonstrate that the audit was effective. Now, in the absence of any problem later on, I cannot say if it was effective or not effective. Ideal situation would be the audit detects the problem that demonstrates the effectiveness. You detect a future problem during the audit, you can say the audit is effective. So again, it's a subjective topic, subjective thing if the audit was effective or not. Now let us first understand what is ISMS and BCMS, and then we'll see why audit is necessary, and finally how to conduct an effective audit. ISMS, Information Security Management System, is a set of policies and procedures for systematically managing an organization's sensitive data. This is how do you manage organizations' critical or sensitive or proprietary data. The goal of an ISMS is to minimize the risk and ensure business continuity by proactively limiting the impact of a security breach. In case a security breach should happen on the organization, how do I limit the impact of that? That is all about Information Security Management System, and it again works on PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. It is defined as a holistic management process that identifies potential threats to an organization and the impact to business operations by those threats, if those threats are realized, they might cause, and which provides a framework for building organization resilience with the capability of an effective response that safeguards the interests of its key stakeholders, reputation, brand, and value creating activities. In a nutshell, we foresee the problems that can happen to the operations of my business, and we take some steps by which the impact of those situations happening would be minimal on my business continuity, would be minimal on my business operations, and I keep continuing with my business, safeguarding my key stakeholders' interests, my reputation, my brand, and value creation activities. So that was ISMS and BCMS. Now, to be really effective in an audit, we need to understand and we need to follow the basics of audit. My 20 years of experience told me that there is no yardstick, there is no set rule to be effective in an audit. If there is one, that is stick to the basics, do the right job, and get the right outcome. So let us talk about the basics of audit. I'll talk about each bullet at a time. First is risk-based audit. Risk-based audit is a methodology which is primarily focused on the inherent risk involved in the activities or system and provide assurance that risk is being managed by the management within the defined risk appetite level. It is the risk management framework that seeks at every stage to reinforce the responsibility of management and the board of directors for managing risk. Risk-based internal audit is being conducted by internal audit departments and helps the risk management function of the company by providing assurance about the risk mitigation. Risk-based internal audit allows internal audit to provide assurance to the board that risk management processes are managing risks effectively in relation to the risk appetite. So, the audits should be risk-based unless the conventional internal audits where we used to do audit for each and every function religiously every year or every two times a year or quarterly, whatever the frequency. Now go and identify which is the most critical function or department for your organization or the firm and increase the frequency of audits on that department or function more than something which is not very critical or core to your business objectives. Next is independence of the auditor. Now, auditor has to be independent, that all of us understand, but let us see it more in the terms of definition. Auditor independence refers to the independence of the internal auditor or of the external auditor from parties that may have a financial interest in the business being audited. Independence requires integrity and an objective approach to the audit process. The concept requires the auditor to carry out his or her work freely in an objective manner. What does this mean? This means there should not be any influence internally or externally which can affect the audit report. So auditor independence becomes very important. Next basics of audit is integrity. Integrity is not a simple concept to define. Many overlapping and distinct definitions are being used. The term integrity is derived from the Latin word intangere, meaning untouched. So now we understand what does integrity means. It refers to the virtue, the incorruptibility, and the state of being unimpaired. The auditor must be incorruptible in the state of being unimpaired. Nothing should be able to influence him. Integrity is closely related to the absence of fraud and corruption, but it also entails common decency. In this context, it is a positive and broad concept related to ethics and culture of auditing team. So integrity also becomes very important part of audits framework. We saw a word objectivity there. Let us see that. Objectivity is an unbiased mental attitude that allows internal auditors to perform engagements in such a manner that they believe in their work product and that no quality compromises are made. Objectivity requires that internal auditors do not subordinate their judgment on audit matters to others. What does this say? Objectivity, again, now if I talk about independence, integrity, objectivity, they all go hand in hand. And the nutshell meaning is the auditor should not be influenced by anything unethical or ethical. Next bullet point we need to discuss is confidentiality. Confidentiality is that auditors shall respect the confidentiality of information acquired and not disclose any such information to third parties without proper and specific authority unless there is a legal or professional right or duty to disclose, and they will not use the information for their own personal advantage or the advantage of third parties. For example, I go and audit one particular department of a firm or a company. I find out some personal details of an employee during the course of the audit. As an auditor, I need to maintain the secrecy of that information and not disclose that information to anybody else. In the same sense, if during the process for audit I find out some secret information, confidential information, proprietary information about the functioning of that particular process or function or organization, as an auditor, I should not go out and discuss that with any third party. Now, there are exceptions to that if there is a legal requirement or there is a professional guidance, means that if I do not disclose that information now to the authorities, to the higher stakeholders of the organization, it may hamper the audit process or the business as such. I can go and disclose that information to the authorities, right authorities. Next basics is proficiency and due professional cares. Now I'll elaborate both of them separately. Proficiency means the ability to apply knowledge appropriately without technical research or assistance. Understanding of principles, auditing principles and techniques. Ability to recognize the indicators of fraud. Knowledge of key IT risks, controls and technology-based audit techniques. Familiarity with management principles and good business practices, and the ability to apply that knowledge to recognize significant deviations and recommend reasonable solutions. Basically, proficiency means the auditor should be able to do his or her job without too much assistance from outside. It also includes human relation skills to maintain satisfactory relationship with clients, oral and written communication skills to clearly and effectively convey engagement objectives, evaluations, conclusions, and recommendations. Now here, I don't believe that every auditor has to be an expert on everything, any more than for example, a goalkeeper should not be expected to be able to play at every position on a football soccer team, but he should know his job. So it is incumbent upon each of us, however, to learn as much as we can so that collectively we can field a winning internal audit team for our organizations. Now you can have combination of expertise in your team. One person can be IT expert, one person can be from operations background, one other person can be from finance background, and you can create a team which is proficient in all aspects collectively. Now let us talk about due professional care. This simply refers to the degree of care which is expected from a reasonable person under the circumstances of a normal, prudent mind. Auditor is neither required nor expected to take special care to conduct an audit engagement. Due care implies the effort which are ordinarily applied by an ordinary reasonable person, that is, the efforts which are expected from a prudent person in a given situation. Auditor is not expected to act no more than a prudent person with the same set of skills and experience. Now, being an auditor, I should not think that I must do a great job. Expectation from an auditor is use your proficiency, use your knowledge, use your experience, and do a job what a normal, prudent person would have done in this given situation. If you are doing that much, you are taking your due professional care. Next is the code of ethics. Now, code of ethics are the principles and expectations governing the behavior of individuals and organizations in the conduct of auditing. Different bodies have their own code of ethics, but all of them talk about all these basics of auditing: independence, objectivity, confidentiality, all these things. Code of ethics describe the minimum requirement for conduct and behavioral expectation rather than the specific activities. Code of ethics is necessary and appropriate for the profession of auditing, founded as it is on the trust placed in its objective assurance that governance, risk management, and control. So, as an auditor, we must follow some code of ethics. Next is planning for an audit, audit plan and methodology. Audit plan is the specific guideline to be followed when conducting an audit. Now, you plan in the beginning of the year for the whole year which departments you would audit on what frequency and when, and what would be the broad scope. It helps the auditor obtain sufficient appropriate evidence for the circumstances, helps keep audit costs at reasonable level, and helps avoid misunderstandings with the client. Now, audit plan and methodology is done. Auditors must need to have the checklist and guidelines in place. Now, what is a checklist? The term audit checklist is used to describe a document that is created during the audit planning stage. This document is essentially a list of tasks that must be completed as part of the audit. Most auditing software programs have a list of standard audit checklist templates that can be used for different types of audits. These documents are created and managed by the senior auditors, who is responsible for the overall audit scope. Now, there is no set template for audit checklist, but it can have broad 5 to 6 sections, which includes the scope of the audit, the methodology for evidence collection, what kind of audit tests should be done, analysis of results, and the conclusion. These sections are fairly static and are used for audit ranging from financial audit to safety audits to business continuity audits. The process used to populate the actual task included in each section varies based upon the audit scope, the tools used to manage the audit, and the experience of the audit staff. Now, auditors need to follow the accepted best practices, or I would call them good practices. Some of them can be: you need to manage and train the client. The client should not expect something which you are not delivering. So manage the expectations, train the client how to get audited effectively. Retain your staff and the clients. Every time if you have a new staff or a new client, you will have to redo the whole learning cycle. If you have your old staff and old clients, you can learn from the old experiences, past experiences, and use that experience for these audits. Plan properly. And I would again use the word effectively. Plan effectively, plan properly. Understand the environment, understand the need, understand the scope, and then plan. Assess the risks to audits. Risk arising due to political factors, risk arising due to environmental factors, risk arising due to human factors, due to technology. You need to assess all those things, all those risks. To save time, use technology. Standardize the formats of work papers, reports, etc., so that you don't have to redo or these things every time you do an audit. Another important part of basics of audit is the reporting. Reporting must be done in a way which is meaningful and effective and useful for the auditee company. The auditor's report is a formal opinion or disclaimer thereof issued by either an internal auditor or an independent external auditor as a result of an internal or external audit or evaluation performed on a legal entity or subdivision thereof called an auditee. Now that's a technical definition. The report, the structure of the report must be, it should start with what was audited and what were the good points you as an auditor identified. Then go further down below with the negative points and points to improve. So that should be the reporting structure. Last but not the least, very important part in any audit process is following up on the non-conformities, observations found out in the report. Unless until you as an auditor follow up, the auditee will not take care of that. More in the internal audit than external audit. Internal audit, you're part of the organization. You must follow up on your observations, on your report with the audited departments and functions to track the closures, to track the corrective actions, preventive actions taken for those observations you found out. As an external auditor, you have a right, you have the privilege. When you go next time to audit them, you always go back to your old report and see if they've closed them or not. So, following the report of external auditor, internal audit team must track, follow up the closures of those observations and non-conformities. So, follow-ups become very important part. Now, I would say if we all follow these basics of audit techniques, the audit must be effective and useful for the auditing firm. And we can see that, I'll just show you that chart. We can see we will be in the fourth quadrant. We will be able to find out detect the problems during the audit. We can demonstrate the effectiveness of the audit. Now I'm done with my slides with that. Am I audible? Geeta, are you there? Yeah. So any questions there? Any questions on the floor? Okay, we have a question here. What is the relationship between confidentiality requirements and the different legal systems of the country the auditor is activating in? Okay, I assume this question must have come from some experience of some countries. I can quote some examples. Now, confidentiality of an auditor is as simple as that. If you have access to some secret information about a person, about a company, about a process, about a function, do not share it with a third party without authorization. Period. Law of the land comes first. If your law of the land says you must share any and every information with the law enforcement agencies, you must share. If not, you cannot. For example, I'll tell you, when BlackBerry was in full use worldwide, Government of India wanted them to disclose the BlackBerry keys so that they can see the communication happening in case if it is required. BlackBerry RIM guys refused to do so, but ultimately they had to give in for the law of the land. So they provided the keys. Another example is you cannot get encryption devices inside China and use them because the law of the land says you cannot encrypt information which the government cannot read. So confidentiality requirements are there, but they are not above the law of the land. So I hope I answered that question. Any more questions? Do we have any more questions? Okay, I assume that there are no more questions, so I complete my webinar here. Thank you so much, guys, for attending this. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.